Very good. All right, thank you, Kev. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll probably start off by asking a question. How many of you have spare change in your pocket? Just an idea. And so really, where I'm going with that is, what is the need for that spare change and the speed of change right now when we're probably going to start our currency is contained in this device, cryptocurrency. And there's also that app out there, Acorn, that if you're not an investor, it takes your spare change and accumulates it and invests it for you. So really, the speed of change right now is very dynamic. It's something that we're looking at it from a district perspective. So what does technology mean for me from an operational perspective? Usually, it's the tip of the spear. So when an incident happens by a camera feed, a sensor going off, an intrusion alarm going off, and then technology also means the sustainment of that operational period. We need that situational awareness in real time for the operators and for the unified commanders. We also need communications, usually in the form of radio, but we also need reliable networks to transfer data, video, and maps of locations for our response. But the technology often comes with a delicate balance. And I say that because we also can't forget how to operate without it. And during my career, and I'll take Kevin out of here, so I'm retired from the United States Park Police, and we know we had some issues with that, and my current position is a tongue twister as well. But with that being said, I've been part of several events in my career where it's taken me back to the Stone Age, and it's knocked out technology. On the morning of 9/11, I was a young sergeant assigned to New York at the Statue of Liberty in Ellis Island. I didn't need technology to tell me the story or listen to it on the radio. It's forever burned in my retinas what happened that day. I had a front row seat. And as those planes hit and those towers went down, we lost everything. The only thing we had left was our one-channel analog radio communicating to our dispatch center that's in Floyd Bennett Field in Brooklyn. So we were looking for some technology, especially when the sun went down. Because if you ever heard the expression that you've been on an island, I've been on an island for a long time, for many years. And when you have to patrol a 12-acre island in the dark, under the moonlight, and with the glow of a burning World Trade Center site, that's what we had to deal with that night. And there was a long shift because we thought they were coming for us, as you could imagine. So I relied on technology to rebuild, opening up the Statue of Liberty in Ellis Island, creating our off-site screening facilities. And that came in the form of screening people, x-ray machines, walk-through and handheld metal detectors, explosive chase detection, also safeguarding those facilities with vehicle mitigations in the form of bollards. And then eventually we opened up the Statue of Liberty sometime later to the public, and we set up a secondary screening site. So with that, we identified some of the gaps. And again, the biggest threat to the Statue of Liberty is explosives. A lot of people think she's this big imposing lady in New York Harbor. She's pretty fragile. 3/32 of an inch thick is the copper. Take 2 pennies, put them together, that's all her copper skin is. So you could imagine that explosives could create some significant cosmetic damage. If you know what you're doing, obviously some catastrophic damage. So when people were approaching the secondary screening site, they were met by a park ranger, and the park ranger gave them this card. And this card has some fun facts on it, and gave people something, the ability to read while they were waiting in line to get into the screening site. Some stuff like how many steps to the top of the pedestal, how many steps to the crown, how many pennies would it take to build the Statue of Liberty. And as the people were waiting through the lines and they were approaching the secondary screening site, they were met by a security guard that was wearing rubber gloves and took this device from them and put it into this other device, and it was a ticket licker. So while these people, we were capturing and dividing their attention, we were hoping for some sort of transfer onto this card, and we were looking for explosives that they might have handled at that point in time. Going into the secondary screening, again, the emphasis went from weapon abatement to explosive abatement. We were one of the first agencies that used the puffer machines, and maybe some of you remember them going through the airport. Again, you went through there, 15 seconds of a puff, trying to dislodge any particles from you, again, looking for explosive trace detection. And that's where technology has helped us safeguard the world's greatest symbol of freedom and hope. Another event was Superstorm Sandy. As you could imagine, we're a maritime operation. 5 of our 7 boats got destroyed in the storm. All of our uniforms, equipment, supplies, all washed out to sea. So there's probably some sexy mermaid right now swimming around in a park police uniform out there somewhere in the seas type of thing. But again, we were brought to our knees and we had to start back from scratch. And the first thing we had to do was bring in the technology, and we got the modern stuff in order to open up the Statue of Liberty again. Coming here last month, we just celebrated the 6-year anniversary of the Navy Yard shooting. And you can imagine the Navy Yard, building 197, 5 floors, 600,000 square feet of office space, mostly of cubicles with tight hallways. During that day, it took 69 minutes for 117 officers from 8 different agencies to neutralize the shooter at that point in time. Looking back at that, I'm hoping that eventually technology will catch up for our need, that we never have to go into a scenario where it's going to take us an hour and 9 minutes to chase somebody down in the building with 117 people from 8 different agencies. So that's a challenge out to industry, and certainly I'm available to talk about some of those challenges a little bit after. Fast forwarding to the future, a lot of stuff I do is from a communication standpoint, and we welcome the dynamic changes in broadband. So it wasn't that long ago for me is when I hooked up to the internet, I went out, I cut my grass, I came back, and I heard, you got mail, right? That's how slow the original internet was. Today we're on the cusp of 5G and what that means, and now we even hear people talking about 6G. So the speed of change is really, again, very significant and dynamic. Kevin was mentioning some of the events we have coming up. I wish we had a couple of weeks for the World Series. It's next week, big guy. I mean, here it comes. So with that, we're preparing for the 3 home games as well as a potential parade should the Nationals be fortunate enough to win. We also have that weekend the Marine Corps Marathon, which is a military-based running event and certainly a security concern for us. We're 97 days away from the State of the Union, 261 days away from the 4th of July, and 461 days from the inauguration. But I'm not counting. Again, so when you say there's a lot of coordination that happens in this National Capital Region, it really does. And because of all of these planned special events, that is our strength in the event a no-notice event happens, because we practice for these planned events. So with that, going back to the spare change, I think I was programmed for this job as a youth. I had my little Scooby-Doo lunchbox as I went to grammar school, and inside I always had taped a dime. And that dime was my lifeline and my contingency plan to use for a payphone. So as I look around, some people are probably wondering, what's a payphone? But again, if you never heard the term drop a dime, that's where it came from. And then if I see some of you guys might be in my class, but again, the dime went out in 1984, and that's when the rates went up to a quarter. So a lot of people weren't happy back in the day. They got that 150% increase, but that's where the expression came from, and I always had that dime with me, and that was my link to communications, or call my parents if I needed help, and I always wanted to make sure we had one. It's not going to be long before the dime is going to go away, and I don't know what the expression is going to be. Drop me an Apple, drop me a Samsung, drop me a Twitter, but that's where we're going. So today I'd just like to end in engagement. For those of you in here, industry is a big part of what we do. I challenge you to challenge industry. Share your experiences with them. Let them know your successes. Don't be afraid to tell them your failures. The only way we get better is letting them know what our requirements are. And don't be afraid to tell them. If they have an ugly baby, let them know. Because sometimes they come up to you, hey, I've got the stuff that you need. Really? You haven't even spoken to me. But I'll listen to your spiel. And a lot of times it ends in disappointment for both of us because it's time we can't get back. So certainly I think it's important that industry understands what the first responder requirements are, and they develop the needs, and then challenge them to demonstrate it in your environment. It's great when you go to their facility and this nice spotless lab and everybody's mocked up and everything works great, but then you take it on the National Mall on the 4th of July with the humidity and the thing won't even go on because it's sweating and no power could get to it. So take that all into consideration, and I'd just like to thank everyone for this opportunity and for the award, and let's stay safe out there and go Nats. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Well done.